Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to Monday Night Mythbusters. I'm Dr. Carolyn George from Vita Integrative Medicine, and this is Leslie Harrington, Transformational Coach. And we're here tonight to speak to you about what your college-bound teen needs to know as they're heading off for this big adventure. So, because I have had a few college-bound teens, I got three that are in college right now. I consider myself kind of an expert on this, and I have written a book called The Dorm Doctor, a College Health Handbook. And so I'm going to talk about some of the things that are in my book, but if there's anything that you want expanded on, there's lots to pick up here, and I'll give you some pointers. I'll kind of tell you a few things about what I've included in the book. Also, for those that might be interested, if you go to the website, and I'll give you the lowdown later too, but if you go to that website and put in your email address, you should be able to then get the first chapter. And if you're having trouble, if the pop-up doesn't come to give you the address, then I'll give you an email that you can write to, and we'll send it to you. Okay, it's just it's a Gmail. It's thedormdoctor@gmail.com. Okay. So let's begin. So let's just kind of start and talk about some of the key things that you want to make sure you're teaching your teen, you're talking to them about before they go off into the world. And this can be even if they're staying home, but more so if they're traveling.
Yes.
And this
I've
also
only been a student. I don't have any, to work with. So.
Now, did you go away from home?
I went away from home and I got very, very sick.
Mm-hmm.
Within the first semester, within the first few months, actually, I got bronchitis and then I got pneumonia.
Yeah.
And then my mom and my sister had to come get me and take me home.
Okay.
And I did, yeah. It was pretty intense, and I'm anxious to talk to you about this. I saw you present on the book, and we've talked about it before. But I have a lot of questions I think I'll be asking as we go.
Well,
also,
we'll answer away. And so this is exactly why I wrote the book, was because when my daughter, my eldest, was in her first few months of college, and she went away to college, she got sick several times and ultimately ended up with mono. And I didn't know how sick she was because she was trying to be independent and not bother her doctor parents, but she had a sore throat and it ended up being mono, and she ended up passing out and going off to the ER and then missed school for a month. I had to bring her home, and she was quite sick. And so I thought, if this can happen to somebody who knows about the importance of diet and exercises, I mean, she did all the healthy lifestyle things that you can do, but nonetheless, she was exposed and didn't quite know how to handle it. And so I think if she had had a book that she could have looked up without bothering mom or dad, not that we would ever make her feel bad about bothering us, but I think that's the way teens approach it. They kind of feel, I'm supposed to be on my own, I don't want to do, so if you have a book that you can kind of look up and have different symptoms, okay, what do I do about that? When does it get dangerous? So I wrote these different segments in, which I'll kind of get to in a little bit. But that was the impetus for writing this book. And then at the same time that my daughter was having these issues, I had a whole bunch of friends whose sons and daughters were also going off to college. And they were also having issues, and everything from UTIs to how to deal with gun violence, how to deal with, all the sexual predators that are out there, the drugs that are in there, the frats and the sororities, never mind the diet, the freshman 15. I mean, there was so many issues coming up. And I thought, where's a reference that I can tell people to go to so that they can have this? And there really wasn't anything.
Yeah.
So
I imagine it's even harder today than it was, 20 years ago when I was in college. But eating properly, right? I mean, all I remember about Florida State University is Guthrie's, 12 p.m., or 12 a.m. drive-throughs and stuff. But even today, there's even more accessibility to junk.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's around, and they'll deliver it to you nowadays, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you can get cookies at 3 o'clock in the morning. They'll deliver right to your door. You don't have to have a car.
Those are the days.
Those are the days. So there's lots of things that go on in college. And I think the most important thing is, if possible, have a very open conversation with your student, with your teen, about what things might go on, because they may have been exposed to it in high school, they may not have. And so you don't want to make any assumptions. So if you can have that open communication, that's always key, obviously. And starting to, most people will have already by this point, because now we're just a few weeks away from college starting again. But most people start during the summer or even the year before, if you're really organized, starting to talk about what foods can you eat while you're in college, what foods can you cook in a dorm, how do you do your laundry, what to take if you get a fever, if you're not feeling sick. So, these are all teachable moments throughout the later high school years that those parents that are maybe have had children going through it already or have had the experience know to start early. But at this point, you can still do a lot. There's these next few weeks, you can start talking to them about what are their favorite healthy meals, how might they cook it in a dorm, or if they're going to be in an apartment, what do they need to cook it? So you can really kind of explore a lot of the food issues with students.
I think too, it's gotten, I know back when I would go to I could call my doctor's office and be like, I need a Z-Pak.
Right.
And if I knew back then what I know today about antibiotics, right. I don't think I would have been so quick to just make those calls and assume that was going to wipe out whatever I was feeling was wrong. And there was a lot of self-diagnosis going on, and the accessibility to my fix, which I probably never even needed,
right.
Unfortunately my doctor was extremely liberal with that. So I don't know what they're like in the college situation, but I imagine going to these clinics and stuff. They
go to the college clinics down, and they try to do a little screening, but I think they're still pretty few with the antibiotics. Yeah. And not as much about advice on sleeping and exercise and diet and the rest of that are really the foundation of good health, right? That's the key thing you want to really help your college student understand, is that yes, they will be up until midnight or later working on papers, but if they're doing that every single night, they are for sure going to get sick because their immune system's going to be shot. So you do it for one night or maybe 2 nights, but then you've got to back up, you got to make up for it, you've got to make sure that you're doing all the other good things that you can do.
Yeah,
so it's really key. Hey there, Ellen and Sally and everybody else who's joined us. Thank you so much.
Hi, Ellen. I know we can't see anybody above those two.
So if anybody has questions, please type it in and I'll try to get to them. But I wanted to go over some of the key things that I thought were good at this stage, a few weeks before kids are heading off. So different things that I think are important to kind of think about.
Are there any distinctions between boys and girls in terms of, like, as a parent, that you would be more specific to recommend for girls versus boys, as far as, I'm sure there's obviously safety things, but as far as some of the things that you cover in the book, are they kind of general to
safety
both?
Things are probably the main area, but other than that, no, your exercise, your sleep, your diet,
it would
your
all
nutrition,
be across the board.
Stress management, and those are all some of the things. So I'm just going to read out to you some of the titles that I chose for the book. And by the way, I say I, and it really means myself and Mika. She was my co-writer, and so she took all of the information, the scientific stuff, and made it understandable, right? Not doctor talk. So we really tried hard to make sure that there was plenty of pictures, there's lots of lists and things that made it very accessible for people, no matter what their language or skill level. So if you like anything in the book, it's probably because of Mika. So just putting a shout out there to Mika. Okay? So some of the chapters. So the first one is on You're Accepted. And then we do one that's called Gross, Staying Sane in a Communal Dorm. And then Put the Ramen Down, and that's all about food. And Stay in Motion, about exercise. And Turning Off the Lights, the consequences of sleep deprivation, which they are almost universally going to experience at some point. And then I'm Melting Down, about stress and anxiety and the things to do for that. And then I did a couple chapters actually on symptom checking. So My Throat Hurts is it, that's the title of the chapter, and that's about, is it strep throat, is it mono, is it a cold, what things could cause your throat to hurt, because that's so common. And then I did a whole bunch of other symptoms like diarrhea and constipation and UTIs, yeast infections, fevers, twisted ankles, like all the things that you can do. I put little bits of information about what they can use, different medicines that they can get over the counter, and when it gets dangerous. And that to me was one of the really important things that I felt needed to be in the book because that wasn't there for my daughter. So she needed to know when it was getting dangerous, and she didn't know that. She didn't recognize that. And so she ended up in the hospital, so I'm hopeful that this will help others not to end up in the hospital, so that when it gets dangerous, tells them who to seek for help. And for example, with eating, with food and nutrition, it can be eating disorders.
Yes.
Right? There's a lot of bulimia and anorexia that goes on campuses because there's this perfect image of what a teenage girl should look like, which is not really reality, but
a lot of drinking and a lot less eating.
A lot of drinking, a lot less eating, yep. And then, of course, we have chapters on when the party starts, and then about sex and about technology overload. So we kind of really tried to kind of cover the gamut. And I put a chapter in there at the very end for parents, being a parent, because this book is written for both the student and the parent, both of their points of views, so that the parents, it's really important for them to kind of know, because it's really hard for a parent to know how much advice to give, when to step in, when not to step in, when to let them have natural consequences and when not to. So there's a little chapter there on, what you might do to be kind of balanced in your response.
Yeah. And not, I guess, probably overreact and or underreact.
Very easy to do either.
Okay.
Yeah. And then if you overreact and you solve all the problems, they never figure out how. If you underreact, well, you can be like me and you're picking your child up from the ER, right?
Okay.
So I don't recommend that.
So we talk about the ER and the sick part of it, but I think one of the biggest things I see, even with the younger kids, is the amount of stress and pressure that they not only have going in high school and even in elementary schools these days, just their testing systems, everything is so different. There's so much more pressure than I ever remember being a student. And I imagine in college, especially for some of those overachievers, it's even more pressure, and how to help them understand and manage that stress when they're in it versus waiting until it's completely, they get home and then it gets even worse because now they're like expected to have a career lined up, and now it's like I've got to transition everything I've learned
how do I be how am I an adult, right?
Yeah.
I don't feel like an adult. What how do I do taxes? How do I do, how do I vote? How do I do all these kinds of things?
I just learned to pay bills, and my mom was still giving me the money for that. So, it is. I imagine
it's a big transition.
Yeah, and so what are some of the stress management techniques that you guys talk about?
So we talk about the gamut of them. So one of the key ways it's easy for most students is exercise, right? So that's not too woo-woo, and kids will get out there. There's gyms at all the colleges, and stress is really relieved, kind of decreased, mitigated by movement, right?
Yeah.
If you think about it, you're sitting there as a student all day long. You're probably eating a lot of junk food just to kind of keep your eyes open as you're working through whatever project or reading you're doing. And so you've got lots of energy but no way to burn it off. And so the body's natural way is to kind of get it in the brain, and you get that anxiety and what about, and you right? You have all these scenarios. Oh, I'm going to fail this course, and then my parents are going to disown me, and I'm never going to have a boyfriend, and and on and on and on you go, all just because of that chocolate bar and bag of chips and no sleep, and then a big project.
Yeah, sleep I think is a really critical one that I see parents with younger kids, and they'll be like, can you explain to her what sleep is and why it's important? Because it took us, it was like a badge of honor to be the more crazy and stressed and the more you worked and the longer the hours and the less sleep you got, like you're like cool that way, right? As an adult, we were rewarded for that in society, and it became the norm, and now it's like they're really full circle reiterating why sleep is really so critical for our health and long term. And so I think if we can teach our kids that at the earlier ages, that don't wait till you're 30 and 40 and your hormones are all out of balance and you're stressed, and that if you start with that being your foundational piece, that's going to kind of like set you up for success. So absolutely. Sleep is critical, and it's something that parents need to. I know in high school, and it's different, they have curfews and they have certain things, but emphasizing why, help them understand the why, not just this is your routine, you know.
And that is one of the first things that I start off with in that first chapter, is that this is your child's first foray usually into doing things on their own, right? They've got to decide what kind of a person are they going to be. They don't have mom and dad there telling them, okay, you've got to get up, you got to get your homework finished, you've got to do this, you got to do that. they're out there on their own. We don't know what they're doing, right? So they've got to decide, are they going to get up early enough to have a good breakfast? Are they going to work out? You know, what kind of things are they going to do for stress management? What are they going to go to a party? Are they going to drink? Are they going to smoke pot? Like, what are they going to do? What kind of person do they want to be? And so this is their kind of first little pushing that envelope and kind of checking out things. Okay, this is how I feel when I exercise. This is how I feel if I don't exercise. This is how I feel if I sleep. This is how I feel if I don't sleep.
Exactly.
So I really want students to be cognizant, to kind of think about, yeah, you're going to have all of those situations, but which one makes you feel the best?
Yeah.
Which one are you more successful at? When do you get the better grades?
Physically and emotionally.
And emotionally, both of them. And so it's really important for them to understand the why, and that's why I put a lot of that information here in the book about all the science behind everything. Excuse me. So there's the science that's there so they can understand and make their own choices. It's not me saying, no, don't have sex until you're 30, you know, or until you get married or whatever. It's not whatever, you know, you might be hearing from those adults around you. They need to decide on their own, and they need to understand the whys and the wherefores, because we're not there to make them do anything.
Yeah, and even I think as adults, that's what happens to us, is we don't have that guidance anymore, and we rely on our own instincts, and sometimes they're not super sharp when it comes to overworking, putting way too much time, not saying no, not setting boundaries, not participating in self-care. You know, we get to a place where we're completely flying by the seat of our pants, and we let go of some of these things that are our basic general health guidelines, you know?
Right, yeah. And then there's some other things that I think are really important for students to think about. So they're entering as freshmen into a new environment. Excuse me. And so they have to think about where are the predators? Where can they get into trouble? And the predators know that there's a lot of newbies on campus. And so they do things that will, that the people that have been around for longer, who are more wise to what's going on, can avoid. So not walking near bushes, making sure you got, you know, your keys out, or some kind of protection, or there are apps on your phone so that if your phone gets knocked out of your hands, you know, it has to be an abrupt movement, that they will then call you, and your friend will call you, and if you don't answer, then they call another friend who can kind of check in on you. So there are a lot of different safety features that one can incorporate into a campus.
Yeah, and in your friends, that's a big deal. So even like who you choose to hang around, and I remember in college, like, we never were anywhere without a wingman. Like, friends don't leave friends, you know. There was never a situation where anyone would ever be left alone or walked away from, or if they disappeared, like, the bus was not leaving until that person was on there.
And that's important really to know, and to say before you go to a party or before you go out to an event, you know, okay, whatever happens, I'm going to wait for you and I'll be here. This is our meeting place. This is the plan.
Absolutely.
And nobody, you know, if anybody veers from that, then you're looking out for that person. Where are they? Who do they go with? Is that somebody that's a college student needs to look out for their buddies?
Absolutely. I love what Marianne says here. Good skills to learn before entering the workforce. For sure. I mean, especially, so you're talking about transitioning from college into the workplace. We're talking about transitioning from high school into college.
Yeah.
A whole another set of skills needs to be implemented, but the foundational things are going to remain the same. It's just going to be how well do you hone them in, and, you know, how much productivity you have to have in the next day, and how you apply it, you know.
Right.
So it's really applicable to all of us in a sense, and I think it's a good reminder to all of us to.
And that's absolutely right. The other big transition is, as Marianne was just saying, entering into the workforce, because that's almost more difficult than entering into college, because in college you have sororities and fraternities, you have people that are around you, but once you do that next step, you really are pretty much on your own. And so these are all skills that can be used through the book. All the skills that I talk about here can be useful for all of these, any kind of transitioning.
Yeah, and as I think we all learned, college doesn't necessarily set you up for stepping your foot right out the door and into a job.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect of value and depression, and what am I going to do, and what's my purpose, and there's a whole slew of emotional things that will come in that time when they're finishing. But all things that are important to talk about, you know, while they're in the process. So I'm like, you know, I just look back at my time, and I did, you know, I did graduate school also, and you really think that you're going to come out with like, I have everything I need. Okay, let's get started. And
Right.
you're like, okay, now, oh, now I gotta like apply for
do
jobs,
this. Right.
and
Yeah.
you know, it's a whole different thing, and that those emotions can really take a toll on your health and on even your nutrition, because then that emotional stress eating, you know, kind of habits have you developed over this
Right.
time while you're in
Yep.
in that position.
In that position. Yeah, all of these things apply. So students, teens, I see Sam Hitchcock. Hey there, Sam. Good to see you.
Hi, Sam.
So yeah, lots of students. I love working with students because they are really open to kind of learning all about their health, right? They generally haven't been, you know, kind of worn down by the grind, right? So they're interested in learning all kinds of new things. And so this is a good time to really explore, who do you want to be? What do you want to do? What do I need for my health? And so looking at that stress management piece, so we talked exercise, but also meditation or breathing exercises. There's mindfulness exercises. There's a variety of things you can do, but there's a lot of things people don't think of that are stress management. So going out with friends, okay, laughing, watching funny movies, you know, doing kind of team sports, throwing a frisbee around. That is all stress
Football
management.
games.
Football games, yeah. Well, not the
Depending on which school you're at.
yeah, the bit beforehand. But all of these types of things, skateboarding, right? Going swimming, going boating, these are all things that are really stress management because they're helping you to kind of just wind down a little bit. So trying to figure out who you want to do that with, have a group of friends. It doesn't have to be all about meditation or exercise. There's a lot of other ways to manage that stress.
Yeah. And what's cool about this is it is truly like a handbook. It's a very easy read. It's got some kind of little like blocks and notes, and then it's got fun little pictures and stuff. They're cute. So I like that. It's very, very easy to find what you're looking for.
Yeah, and we tried. And at the end of the book, and this was something that I wanted to have for my kids, at the end of the book there's a couple pages where you can put in, as a parent, you can write in your student's doctor's name, dentist's name, if they have diabetes, ulcerative colitis, asthma, any kind of special medical needs, then you can write in those specialists, and you can write in the medications that they're taking and the allergies. So they've got this as a little reference that whenever they go to a doctor, they've got all the information they need there, their insurance information. All of that can be right there at the end of the book, and it's lightweight, so it's easy to bring around with them.
Yeah, and you know, some of the things I talk to people about is that some people are looking so much for perfection. They want like this perfect plan that they're probably not going to stick to, rather than something maybe imperfect that might be more accessible to them. That might be something that would be more consistent. So looking at following general principles of health, right? The sleep, the exercise, the trying to eat real food instead of fake food. Those are general principles. Trying to eat the exact right food at the right time, and is it going to be, you know, try not to get so in the dirty detail, because when you're following so much the tactic and the technique and the diets and this and that, you forget about the principles. Like, the principles are going to get you where you need to go, and they're going to keep you in a good place. So focus on kind of those general principles. I have people that are so worried about the type of food they should eat, but I'm like, they're still eating processed. So I'm like, you're worried about eating, you know, a carrot versus an apple, but you still haven't really taken this general get rid of this out of your, and they're
still eating the mac and cheese.
Yeah. So they get too much into I'm not really sure how you know, what I should be eating and da-da-da. Well, let's stick with the general first, the general rules, and then you hone in on from there. But same concept applies in this case, as if you're working on your sleep and your stress management and your exercise and keeping your nutrition, you know, generally in the right direction, you're going to have a much more successful outcome than trying to like nail down the perfect diet while you're in the middle of testing season. You know?
And in cafeterias, if you're on a cafeteria plan, that can be a challenge because they tend to cycle the food every 2 weeks. You get a repeat. The food's always much better when parents come, I'll tell you that. But then the other days, you're left with kind of something much more mundane. Some colleges do a really great vegan, vegetarian spread. Other colleges don't. Some colleges offer gluten-free, dairy-free. Other colleges less so. So you want to talk to the people at your college to see kind of if you have any food preferences or requirements that make sure that they can meet that. And then going into the cafeteria, seeing what other restaurants you can use. If you're in a dorm, there's usually a cooking area, so you can bring a pot or a pan. And there's usually a fridge. You can't leave your stuff in their fridge, but there'll be some cooking area that you can go in maybe with some friends and make a meal, so that you all bring a little bit and make a meal in this common area, and then you of course have to clean up. But there's often that possibility, so maybe once a week or every 2 weeks you can actually have a real home-cooked meal if you want. I know some of my daughter's friends cooked all the time. She almost never used the dorm plan.
Cook a lot too.
Yeah, she just would get all of her stuff in that common area and cook up a whole slew of food and just loved it. And she very rarely used the dorm plan. Other kids use the cafeteria plan all the time.
Yeah.
So it just, you need to have options. Yeah. And it is good if you have like a little fridge in your room, and most of the rooms will accommodate that. So you can have some fruits and some vegetables that you can chomp on, something to have late at night, so you're not always going out for that 3 o'clock in the morning cookie or pizza or whatever. So there's ways to kind of make sure that you're eating and eating healthy, relatively so. Not to say that you never have ice cream or cookies. I mean, that's all okay.
Yeah, it's balance.
Right, it's all about balance.
So are there people out there who have people that, kids that are going away for the first time, or maybe even not the first semester, but the second or third, and they're seeing that these are some of the things they need to help their kids with just after that first time? Or maybe even people, that have got high school students that are in their senior year, and these are things that you can really...
This is totally a good thing to start off in that junior and senior year of high school. But start off small so they're not feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But help them learn how to do their laundry, get them to cook maybe one meal every couple of weeks, and grocery shop and write it down so they've got it. So they've got a few things that, after that first year in the dorm, a lot of kids then move out to their own apartments. Yeah. So even if you're not going to cook in that first year, you probably will in the second and third and fourth year. So learning a few recipes, whatever your favorite ones are, and kind of making them simple, learning those stress management techniques, talking about exercise and the importance of it. These are all great conversations for junior and seniors, as much as they'll do it, because they're, they're kind of into their independence at that time. But we can be kind of willing offerings, whenever we see that the moment might be right in helping them. And
then, of course, by example, what are you doing, and how are you eating, and how are you cooking at home? Are you eating out every night? What kind of habits are they developed as part of their regular household with their family?
Yep.
And how will that transition into their lifestyle when they go out on their own?
Yep. And that goes, for the other parts that we haven't talked as much about, because it gets a little personal, but the drugs, the alcohol, the sex, that's all available on all of the campuses, probably happening on a lot of high schools, whether you know it or not. So you don't know what your students, or maybe you do, what your students' exposure in high school has been, and it'll certainly be more than that in college. And so having an open, honest conversation with them about the risks and about how they might want to make themselves more protected or safer from the consequences of poor decisions in those areas, because they're definitely out there. Yeah.
So great topic, guys. If you have any questions, definitely dive in. We're at the time here. Share this out. I know this is a time when a lot of people are like, I can't get on live, but they do go back and watch it on YouTube. Right. It is replayed, but it's definitely something, it's the right time. I know people are going off to college now, right? They're starting now. So in the next few weeks, you'll be kind of finding yourself in this boat.
Absolutely. So please feel free to share this. And if you're interested in that first chapter or a little bit more information, the website is www.thedormdoctor, all spelled out, THEDORMDOCTOR.com. So thedormdoctor.com. Or if that's not working in terms of the pop-up that should give you the first chapter, if you just email me at thedormdoctor@gmail.com, and this one, doctor is not spelled out, it's thedormdr@gmail.com, then we'll be happy to send it to you. We just need your email. Okay. And if you're interested in the book, you can get it on Amazon. You can get it on the dormdoctor.com website. It's there both in solid form, so you get a physical book with the section in the back in terms of healthy diets and places that you can list all the medications and doctors and things like that. Or there is an ebook version, so that's on Amazon as well. So feel free to check it out, see if it's useful to you and your student. And I wish you all a wonderful freshman year. Okay, it's exciting. It's a great journey. So just dive in and be that successful student. Oh, and I did forget to tell you, I am soon coming up with some videos called The Dorm Life with Dr. G. So when that is out, if you're on my mailing list at the Dorm Doctor, if you're on my mailing list, you'll get an invitation. So then I'll have a series of 6 videos that kind of talk about some of those key things, like what not to share, what to have in a first aid kit, to mention a few, right? So we kind of dive into some of this other stuff. So I'm trying to put out more information to keep those college students healthy and successful, because you'll get much better grades if you're successful and, if you're healthy, you'll be much more successful.
Yeah, definitely. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining. Have a great night.
Thanks, everybody. Good night now. Oh, and next week, we won't be here.
Oh.
But the week after we will be. So we'll be talking that week, I think, about how to get the brain fog away.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so
yes.
if you have any issues with brain fog, tune in 2 weeks.
At any time of day, by the way.
Yeah.
It could be morning, it could be after food, it could be
any time. Any brain fog, then come here to Facebook Live with Monday Night Mythbusters on the 2 weeks, Monday.
The 20th? Yeah.
20th, yeah, the 20th.
All right, great. Have a good night, guys.
Good night.
Thank you.